Welcome everyone to Career Prep for college students making the most of this time. We want to thank you for your time and attention this evening and let you know that we have Kathleen Dion, who is a career specialist. She's been working in higher ed for over 19 years. She will be presenting tonight. She has held positions in admissions, financial aid, career services, as well as education for colleges and universities across our nation, both on the East and West Coast. She understands the complete student journey of choosing a major, applying to college, and earning a degree. She fully understands the hard work and perseverance necessary to graduate and land a job of your dreams. And she is a dynamic teacher and on a rare topic that we don't see a lot of. During our years in private practice, we have found that many colleges miss the mark when it comes to preparing for internships and as well as preparing students to go out and secure a professional job in their field upon graduation. Kathleen has the expertise that every student needs to get going in the right direction when it comes to career and professional job. So I would like to thank Kathleen for her time. We also have on the line with us other panelists that can help answer questions along the way. Before we get started, I would like to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you see the orange arrow in your right-hand screen, you can go down to questions and you can ask questions along the way. We will be taking questions. I will be monitoring that. My name is Shelley Honeycutt. I'm here to assist Kathleen Dion and answer any questions if she would like us to, as well as Tom O'Hare. We are all admissions specialists and we hope that you enjoy tonight's presentation. So Kathleen, without further ado, you have the floor.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Shelley and Tom, for being here tonight and everyone for attending. I'm excited to be able to have the opportunity to speak to people about this topic because as we all know and maybe be experiencing, college campuses have sent students home. Many of them are doing online schooling, and some of them, like BU, just announced today that they probably will not be bringing students back until January of 2021, and they'll be doing an online semester. But if you are someone in college getting ready for internship and job search, needs to be happening now, and it isn't something that you can ignore. So I'm hoping that the information we're going to share tonight is going to give tips and tricks and just some guidance, a direction, a to-do list to help students keep that journey underway. So the agenda for this evening, we are going to talk about resumes. We're going to talk about LinkedIn profiles and how important they are, some do's and don'ts. Social media, not as in what it is, as what it should not be. We'll talk about cleaning that up and getting it ready for an internship or job search. We'll talk about conducting research, which is a very important piece to getting ready for conducting a search for an internship or job. Networking that can actually happen now, even though many of us are stuck at home behind our computers. There are ways to connect with people, communicate with them, and start to develop relationships that you are going to use moving forward. And I also wanted to touch a little bit about timelines. So no matter where you are in your college journey, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, potentially beyond, there is something that you should be doing. So that's actually where we're going to start. We'll talk a little bit about that. So as a freshman, my favorite thing when I worked in career services at a university campus was when freshmen came in and introduced themselves. Your career advisors on campus, many of them are your first network. I was asked quite often by companies that came to campus regularly recruiting for interns and job seekers, who do you know? This is the job, these are the skills I need, and what student would you recommend? And developing that relationship early on your freshman year is a great way to get that ball rolling. You can also start transitioning your resume over. So the resume that you have when you enter college is probably the resume that helped get you into college. So it's a little bit different than presenting yourself in a professional manner as a job seeker. So I say get started fall of your freshman year. In your sophomore year, you're going to want to start expanding your network. You really need to start um, going to events on campus. A lot of schools bring employers in, have panels that you can sit in on, and they're not necessarily large events that the whole campus will go to or be invited to. Some of them are very departmental driven, so getting in touch with your co-chairs, but starting to do some research, starting to make some choices, picking directions, just to get to know the lay of the land. You don't know what you want to do a lot of times until you know what you don't want to do, and gathering information is a way to start this journey. That said, when you come back to campus your junior year, you need to be ready to rock. There are many organizations and large organizations that are actually recruiting the juniors the fall of junior year. And they are recruiting for internships that are going to happen between your junior and summer year. So I used to tell all of my juniors, or even my sophomores before they became juniors, come with your suit packed. Many of the big career fairs are happening in the fall on campus. They also have another big career fair in the spring traditionally, but in the fall is when these companies have the most amount of openings available. Would you want to apply to Johnson and Johnson when they have 35 slots that they're looking to fill? Or do you want to wait till March when they have 5 slots ready? So your junior year is really important, and you really need to be ready to go. So that means between sophomore year and junior year, that summer, you should really start to narrow down your research. You can use university resources such as Handshake. A lot of them have tools where they, like databases that you have access to as a student, start to narrow it down, see what companies you're interested in, look at the jobs that they're posting. Many times you have to apply to these jobs before you even go to the career fair. So it's a very busy fall for many juniors. So keep that in mind. And then senior year, man, you just gotta you gotta keep on rolling. Hopefully, if you've liked your internship that you did, potentially your junior year summer, a lot of organizations will extend a contingent job offer. Based on you completing, with a certain grade point average or whatever it may be. So if you're not one of the people that has that offer, and you haven't done anything wrong if you're not, but you need to keep looking. Again, you need to go to every event. You need to knock on every door. It is the time in your life where you mention to everyone that it is appropriate to, hey, by the way, I'm looking for a job. Who do you know? And that's what senior year is all about. So you can use resources on campus, hopefully some of that network that you've developed, and we'll talk about that later. So just keep that in mind. It's never too soon to get started, and it's never too late to get going. So let's start off by talking about resumes. Most of you know what they are, but I wanted to get an actual definition. Um, so your resume is just a, brief written document of your experience, and that experience varies. It can be educational experience, professional experience, jobs that you've had, but it's something that you're going to present to someone, right, as a potential employer. And what this tool does for you is it gets you the meeting. You get yourself the job, but this helps get you through the door. So if you put those eyes on this document, it's going to help you make some good choices moving forward. And let's talk about some of those choices. What is some of the content that needs to be listed on a resume? Let's start right from the top. Contact information. This has changed a little bit over the years. I think the best contact information to have on your resume is your name. You need to have a phone number, an email address. You need to have a city and a state. You don't need to have a street address anymore. Some of that is just cybersecurity, for instance. If you're posting your resume on LinkedIn or Indeed, you don't necessarily want all of that personal information out there, but people do need to absolutely know how to get in touch with you. If you have your LinkedIn profile developed, which if you followed my guidance, you do, you're also going to include your customized LinkedIn URL for easy access. A little secret that I think new job seekers do not know is that about 90% of recruiters are using LinkedIn as a second stop. So they're going to look at your resume, they're going to make a decision about the information that's on it, and if they like what they see, a lot of them are going to LinkedIn next, which is why it's so important and it should be easily accessible. You need to list your education. Take off high school. Now that you're in college, we know that you've completed in some way, shape, or form, so it is not necessary anymore, but you need to get the details of your education correct. And I say this, and I always laugh when I say it, but I've seen it more often than I'd like to admit. You need the proper name of the college or university that you are attending. You need the city and the state that they are in. You need to list the degree that you are earning, right? Is it a Bachelor of Science, an Associate in Science, an Associate of Arts? Um, and then you need to list your major. Again, look at your college, look at your catalog. Sometimes major names change and you have the name from 3 years ago and the new students have the name from now. Just make sure you get those details accurate. You need to include your graduation date. So not so granular as to say May 18th, 2021, but you need to have your month and your year. And you are considered a candidate because you haven't earned your degree yet. So if you list candidate and then month and year, they're going to know what that means. You can also, and you should, list if you have a minor or if you have a concentration. In the education section, you could also list coursework. So there's a few different variations. And when I take you out to the portal and show you an example, you'll get a sense of that. You should seriously consider putting a summary of skills or highlight of qualifications on your resume. This category sits at the top, usually in this order: contact information, education, and then summary of skills. This is a great category to customize your resume. So what you're using is that job description or internship description and making decisions about what skills and experiences that you have that are in line with it, and really make the reader realize that you are a good potential choice. So you want to be strategic about what you say, and I do fully believe that this category should change at least a couple of the statements every time you send your resume out the door. So a little bit labor intensive, but hopefully will be very worthwhile in the end. And it's typically between 3 to 6 bullet statements, depending on how robust your experience is or other categories. And you are using bullet statements typically. You're not writing a full paragraph using I. Resumes aren't designed that way, and you'll see that in the example in just a couple minutes. You want to speak about your work experience. I personally feel like all work experience is valuable. The more directly related your experience is to the job that you want, the more you're going to speak about it. So there are ways to list experience where if, for instance, you had a job that really isn't directly related, but it taught you things like working well with others and showing up on time and knowing how to take directions from a boss. Those are actually really difficult things to teach to people who are new to the workforce, believe it or not. And something like that, you might only list, the company, the title, and the dates. But if you have a directly related work experience, you're going to list your title, your company, your dates, but you might have 3 to 5 bullet statements outlining your accomplishments and responsibilities because it is directly related. So work experience usually takes a little bit of time, but you certainly want to include the details. And I would say look at every work experience that you've had as potentially valuable toward helping you climb to the next step in your career. Then there are a whole host of other categories. Sometimes you have one of these categories, sometimes you have more than one. So you could have a list of accomplishments or honors, right? Things that you've been recognized for. You might want to list things. So for instance, if you were in DECA, and I bring this one up because most students were in DECA in high school and then joined DECA in college, and maybe you made it to regionals. That's something that you probably want to keep on your resume. If you've held leadership positions, you can put that in these categories. This is a great place to maybe involve your friends and family. You might not remember everything, and they might actually point out something that is very relevant and very important. So those are very important categories. You want to talk about involvement, so volunteer or community service. If you're someone that maybe doesn't have a lot of work experience, but you have a lot of volunteer experience, you can actually interchange this. So sometimes your volunteer, your title could be volunteer for an organization, but you're writing bullet statements about it because it does serve as directly related work experience. So there's different ways to use this, and also activities. You're taking off the high school stuff at this point for the most part. There might be a couple of things that stay on depending on what they are, but you are replacing mostly with college. So if you're in clubs, if you're in activities, if you're an athlete, you do want to mention these things. At the very least, just being able to organize your life, right? Be successful, go to school, get good grades, and have time to do some extras. It's a statement about your organizational skills. So these are very important too.
Kathleen, I have a
Yes.
question. I have a question about scholarships. In that
Yeah.
section, would somebody post or list on their scholarship, especially if it's a bigger one or a bigger achievement, like a trustee scholarship or something of that nature?
Absolutely. And I always used to recommend, or I do recommend to college students, even if you earned a scholarship from, high school to college to get you there, I think you should put that on. And depending on where it's from, so if it's a university scholarship, you might list it in the education section, for instance, or if it's a scholarship from another organization, it might be somewhere else on the page. But absolutely, scholarships show, they speak highly about the person that received them.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right. And let's talk about formatting. And then I'll pull up my examples and we can take a quick look at that together. I put one page first because that's where my students used to laugh at me the most. And I'm here to tell you that it is entirely possible. When you're crafting your very first resume, don't worry about length. You're going to edit it back and you're going to ultimately get to that one page. But what you need to do is customize your resume. And I always use myself as an example because I have over 20 years of experience in various industries. In higher ed alone, I've worked in admissions, financial aid, career services, and education. And my example to my students is if I'm applying for a job to teach, why am I going to tell them about my admissions experience at length? Right? They probably don't need a lot of bullet statements about that, but they want a lot of bullet statements about what I've done in the classroom. So that's where the customization and the choices are going to come in. So the one page is what you're shooting for, and there are some formatting tricks that will help you get there. That's the last thing that you do, trust me. But you can play with the margins, you can play with the fonts, you can play with the spacings. You're looking at fonts between 10 and 12 point. 9 is too small, I guarantee it. You don't want to go there, but there are ways to get you there. When you're listing information, you want to be reverse chronological. And what that means is the most recent first. So I'm not going to start with what I did 5 years ago. I'm going to start with what I am doing today, and I'm going to work back from there. And that's in all the categories. So if you're listing your volunteer, you're going to do it reverse chronological. Your education, if you have more than one school that needs to be listed, reverse chronological. As I mentioned before, paragraphs are not for resumes. Bullet statements are for resumes. The average amount of time that someone looks at a resume to decide if you're going to go from, the next to go to the next pile, and everyone's next pile is a little different. Some people's next pile is the next time I look at these, I'm going to look at them for a minute. And some people's next pile is this is the group I'm going to make a phone call to. So everybody's next pile is different. But to get moved from the first pile to the second pile, someone's going to look at your resume for about 10 seconds. Truly, it sounds cruel because you spend so much time putting these together, and they are such personal documents about yourself. But with that in mind, you need to write these in a way where people can review them quickly. They're getting the information they need right up top, and you are connecting the dots for them. Don't make them guess. If they are asking for Excel, do not tell them Microsoft Word, and they need to assume that you know how to do Excel. You tell them Excel. It's not rocket science. It's the human condition. They want to know the information that they're asking about. And you do that with bullet statements, and they are not grammatically accurate, I guess, correct statements. They're not using the, right? They're starting with action words. And with bullet statements, you are quantifying and qualifying. So you don't just say, ran a busy store, right? Because everyone's busy is different. The person's busy who's reading the resume could be very different than the busy that you are trying to imply, right? Did you work, the Friday after Thanksgiving and check out 500 guests from your store and you ran $50,000 through your register? Please don't just say busy. That would be an absolute waste of space on a resume. So when I say quantify and qualify, those are very important tools to helping someone understand what's possible. And you also need to consider the software that you're using. So you can start a resume in any software that you want. Google Tools work, Apple Tools Pages works. I will say though, the industry standard for corporate, for business, is Word. And ultimately, you want to save your resume as a PDF because that's universal and no one can change any information that's on it. So a couple little tips. I do know that when you are saving a Pages document and saving it as a Word document, I'm an Apple girl myself, the formatting gets tweaked just a little. It always ends up going over onto the second page. And I've also seen some anomalies with the Google tool. So, if you are a college student and you are, starting to get in the business realm, you can probably get a free download of Word from your university, or you could probably find it, pretty inexpensively if you had to through Microsoft. So I would consider getting your hands on that. All right, so let's go out to the portal and take a quick look at some of the examples. So as we said, this is a piece of I'll actually start right from the beginning so you can get a quick look. So this is the Pivotal College Years College Planning Portal for Families. And as you see, we have all of these categories and tons of information. But back here on page 2 is the career information. And this is the part that I control, I guess. I helped write. So resumes and internships and jobs. And there's a resume checklist. This is great to help you get started. So as I mentioned, just making a list of everything is good, but this gives you some specific information about the different categories that I mentioned. And this will help you develop a good first draft. Yeah.
How are they going to get access to the portal?
So if you go right to pivotalcollegeyears.com, you can, if you are a AAA Northeast member, we've recently partnered with them and they're offering the portal for free to their members. But also because of everything that we have going on now with the COVID situation, we here at Pivotal College Years are now offering the portal free to everyone as well, at least until January of 2021. So for the next 6 months. So if you go right to Pivotal College Years, I can show you. pivotalcollegeyears.com, you can access your free right here. And there you go. If you're a AAA member, you click here. If you're not, you got your free access.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. So back to the resume document, this is a nice outline, a lot more details than I was able to give, and it will really help you get started and put a good draft of your resume together. And then let's look at a couple of examples. So here's an example of a typical college student. We've got their name, we've got their phone, their email, their LinkedIn, a little summary up here, and then a highlights of qualifications. Remember I talked about that section that is very customizable, right? They're mentioning software here. This student is a finance student, which makes sense about their choices, right? They're talking about portfolio management, so things that are very relevant to the job that they want, the university that they attended. See, they're a candidate of 2020, a Bachelor of Science in Finance, and they had a concentration in operations, right? Very clear, very concise. It's telling a story, but it's telling it in a way that it doesn't take much time to get through the details. Then we go right into work experience, right? This person has some experience that is relevant. But look down here, this is an interesting example because they were a foreman and a painter, and they're a finance student, but they're still talking about it. But look at what they're talking about. They're not talking about what type of paint they used or what brush they chose. They're actually talking about relevant details that actually translate to someone in business, right? Because that's the other side of it. They're talking about how they recruited and trained employees, how they managed and assisted operations, how they sold, right? They sold to clients. So there are ways, even if you think you have experience that isn't directly related, you might be able to think about the things that actually are and still use it as a very valid experience that's going to help you get the job that you want or the internship. And then this person had associations and volunteer work, and a little bit limited. They're not speaking at length about it because they don't need to, but they want to make people aware that they did these extras. They were in the finance club, they volunteered at an elementary school, so there's a few things on there. So this is just a good example, and there are multiple examples listed to choose from in the checklist in the portal, as well as all of this information right here. And it'll help get you started. All right, so let's go back to the presentation. All right, and let's talk about tips to getting started, because that's the other part. I know when I used to have meetings with students, or I still do, you get writer's block. I throw all this information at you and you go, okay, so where do I begin? I think you start with making a list, truly. It's that simple, and you're going to fill in the blanks at the end. So you're going to need to know the jobs that you've held, the titles that you had, the dates of employment. You need to develop a list of accomplishments and awards, right? That's where I said bring in the family, bring in the friends, ask the questions, see if they remember anything that you don't. You're going to want to list out your volunteer and community service. Again, you need to make choices because you're transitioning from high school to college. If you did something significant, things like Special Olympics, a lot of times if students did that in high school, but they didn't do it in college, sometimes we leave it on. It's one of those organizations that's really near and dear to a lot of people. So, you might leave that on, but for the most part, you're transitioning to things that you've done while you're in college. You need to think about your skills, right? What are the skills that you have that you are going to be able to offer someone that's relevant in that internship or job that you want? How do you choose? We're all good at a lot of things, and that's awesome because you're supposed to be, but you can't tell them everything. So I say, go out onto Indeed or Simply Hired, or maybe to Handshake or another university tool where there are job postings relevant with the types of jobs that you would want, and look at the types of skills and experiences that they're asking for, and that's going to help you make your choices. In addition to that, obviously, you're going to list out your education, all the different details that you think are important. You want to think about relevant coursework as well. Part of the reason you're stepping out of the workforce to go to college is to actually gain knowledge, and that knowledge counts a little bit toward experience. Typically speaking, if you've completed a bachelor's degree and you did an internship or two while you were in school, I think if a job says 3 years experience, you've earned the right to apply to that and be a good possibility for somebody. So don't dismiss it. So talk about courses that you've taken, relevant projects, maybe something, above and beyond that you've done, and that could potentially be listed on your resume. And truly, do not worry about the length of the resume in the beginning. You're going to pare that back. Just get it all out, see what you have to work with, start to make choices, and edit from there. That's the last thing that you do. All right, so that's it about resumes. Any questions come in? Any other questions about resumes before we moved into LinkedIn profile?
No, Kathleen, excellent and insightful information. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the LinkedIn portion.
Excellent. So LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the other piece. As I mentioned before, a high percentage, about 90% of the recruiters that I would speak with at career fairs and in my dealings as a career advisor, they are using LinkedIn as a tool to decide whether or not they're bringing people in for an interview. So it is very, very important to have one. It is your opportunity to build your brand, to explain fully what you're capable of. So it is an integral piece. It's also a great way to connect to other professionals and network. So for all these reasons, you're going to need to take some time. Some of you already have LinkedIn profiles that maybe got developed just by accident. I think at one point, anybody that opened a Google account got one, or Microsoft. So it could just be out there. But if it's been a while since you've accessed your account, spend a little time, dig out your credentials, get your email address and um, your used password, and start working on it. All right. If you haven't ever had a LinkedIn profile, go right to linkedin.com and develop your profile. And I have some information in there about doing that. So again, it takes a little time. But what I want to do is talk to you about the content that you need to
Kathleen,
have.
is
Yes,
there content within the Pivotal College Years portal for them to look at to help them develop their LinkedIn profile once they get
absolutely.
started? Okay.
Yeah, so I was actually going to go there as well, but since you brought
Okay.
it up, I'll go there now.
Oh,
So, right in that career services section, we have a LinkedIn area, and we have I put a video in there that gives some good information that would be helpful. And then also there is a profile checklist, which I think is very helpful. And this is a great checklist to help you get started, especially if you are in college and maybe you felt like you didn't have a lot to speak about. There are things that you can do, information that you can include that really make your LinkedIn profile engaging. And let's start right from the top. Your photo. Your LinkedIn profile is your professional version of you. So you need a professional photo. Doesn't mean you need to go out and hire a professional photographer, but it means that you're not digging through your phone and, the photo you took last Thursday night with your friends. That's just not it. So make sure that you are in professional dress, according to your industry. There's some industries where that's, you have a little bit of wiggle room. But for the most part, think of this as this is your best professional photo. You need to have a headline, and that's right up here, right? Sometimes you could mention what your major is. If you have a job in the industry already, you could do that. You can definitely be creative with your headline, but don't just put student. That is way too vague. You at least need to mention the industry that you are part of or want to be part of to give someone an idea of what you want, because recruiters are also going out and searching on LinkedIn for candidates for jobs, and there are over the years they've developed some great job searching tools. So LinkedIn is now more than just networking, it's also a job posting board, so it ties directly to your profile and the information that's in it. So there's some interesting algorithms in there that can help you. A summary, you definitely want to write about yourself. The thing about LinkedIn is not your resume, which is lovely. You can use words like I, and you can write paragraphs. Actually, it's nice to not just see bullet statements on a LinkedIn profile. I think it's your opportunity to give yourself a bit of a third dimension, to speak about, your professional interests or how you work, and what you actually enjoy about the job that you have or the type of job that you want. So yeah, again, you have a little bit more room within a professional perspective, but to give a little bit more information. You're going to want to list your experience. Again, all the jobs that are on your resume, absolutely. But how about those jobs maybe you left off? Or the other stuff that you maybe just listed the company, the title, and the dates because it wasn't directly related. Well, LinkedIn is the place where you can put all the other stuff, which is fantastic because recruiters are getting more information. And people that maybe want to get to know you for business purposes outside of hiring, they'll see your background. And maybe you have some places where your lives, you have some commonalities and it's a reason to do business together. So it's a great opportunity to share information. If the companies that you have worked for do have LinkedIn profiles, you want to be sure to connect them here because you want that company icon to show up next to the experience. If the company doesn't have a LinkedIn profile, anybody that's been on it has probably noticed this. There's not an icon there. It looks a little blank for my taste, but it is what it is. But connect if they're there. List organizations, right? So are there clubs at school that you're part of? Are there groups outside of school that you're part of? You can list all of these things. That's very important. There's a whole education section. So your university, your major, your degree. I will say that LinkedIn tries to pre-populate a lot of information, but you can overwrite it. So, if it pops up a BA, but it was a BS, make sure you put BS in instead. And then you could also list, other accomplishments. So again, in the education section, you could also list other things, or you could save it for another section. But you need to have your education posted. And once you have your education on your profile, there's actually a way to do some searching through alumni, which is a great way if you're exploring and doing research. Maybe you want to do some informational interviews with people in your field, but maybe you don't know anyone. If you search through your university connections, alumni, maybe at a company that you want to work with, what a great reason to reach out to somebody that you don't know yet. Hi, I'm part of the finance program at Bryant, and I see that you were too, and you're working at Amica. Oh my goodness, I'd love to work there someday. Could you spare 30 minutes to talk to me about what your experience has been like? Most everyone is going to say yes. So there's some reasons to make sure that this is fleshed out. You want to list volunteer and causes again, maybe where you didn't put statements or information about what you did with these organizations. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to do this. So, craft some interesting information about what you've done. Again, always quantifying and qualifying are a great thing, right? If you worked at a food bank and you fed 500 people, you might want to say that. Um,
Kathleen, um,
yes.
in our private practice, our private college planning practice, we work with a lot of graduate student candidates. Would
Mhm.
this be a good place for them to talk about clinical hours, especially if they're going for a PA program, pre-med, dental, something of that nature?
Absolutely. I think that would be a great place. And I would even go so far as to say that is experience rather than volunteer,
Oh,
because it's very directly related to the direction that they want to go. But they could, list their titles appropriately. Maybe it was a, PA shadow. So someone knows that they weren't doing the actual work, they were observing, right? Or they were an observer. But yes, absolutely. That's a great point.
and by the way, for the audience, most graduate applications do ask for the LinkedIn profile.
Yes. And they want a resume as well. So it's a good reason to have it in good working order when you're transitioning out of your bachelor's, even if you're getting a little experience in between. Skills and expertise. So the next section, what's great about this category is these are your searchable skills. So if someone goes in and they're looking for talent, if they're using LinkedIn in that manner, the skills and expertise that you list are your searchable categories. So flesh this out. And then what can happen is people can endorse you with these skills, which is great. So, if you're connected to someone in your network and they go, oh, do you know Kathleen for her presenting skills? And they do, and they want to say, yeah, she's great. They're given that opportunity. And then the endorsements show up on your side and then also on their side that they've endorsed you. It's a way to be active on LinkedIn. You don't want to endorse everyone that ever comes your way. You want to make sure that it's relevant and it's true, but it's a way to be searchable and also participate in the platform. Honors and awards, again, depending on what they are, if you get an award through your educational institution, you may list it in education or you may keep it down here in honors and awards. So you want to make sure you list that. Coursework, I always say it's relevant coursework, right? Because you take a lot of classes in 4 years of college, and they don't need to know that you've taken English 1, 2, and 3, even if you're an English major, because everybody took those. What you would want to do is list your higher level relevant coursework. This is also where you could list projects in another category. So if you have some significant projects that you've worked on, either through inside or outside of your education, this is your opportunity to list them. I will say one thing for projects: if you worked in a group, give credit where credit is due. So don't just say that you were the only one, but what happens is when you start to list the other classmates or, colleagues that helped, um, it also can show up on their side too. So it's a way to help everybody's profile. And finally, recommendations. Once your profile is up and running and you've got some good information in there, you can actually start reaching out to people, which is what I suggest. Start to develop your network, but you can also ask for recommendations. And as an instructor at the college, I've had students that I've worked with reach out to me, and I've written recommendations about their performance in the classroom or however we've worked together. So you can look at recommendations from a few different directions. If you have a manager, you can ask them. You could ask colleagues, that's perfectly fine, but you can also ask department chairs or faculty, that know you well, maybe you've had for several classes or worked on a special project with. And recommendations definitely are helpful. They're endorsements and they are always on your profile. So if someone logs in and looks at your profile and you have those visible to the public, they will see that information too. So these are the basics. These are the categories that you're really going to want to focus on when you are looking at your LinkedIn profile. And like I said, once it's up and running, you really want to start reaching out to people. You want to start connecting. When you go to career fairs, for instance, and you've had conversations with recruiters and you've got their business card, send them a thank you email. Please send them a thank you email, because it's about 10%, they say, of students that actually follow up. But link to them on LinkedIn, and it is a great way to stay in touch. So there's a lot of great ways to use this. Um, all right, so that's some tips and tricks. Like I said, I'm cutting 5 weeks into an hour, so we're going to move on from there. Social media review. So every student who is about, or anybody, not student, adults, anyone, who is about to launch a job or internship search needs to take a look at their online presence. And by this, I mean type your name in quotes into Google and see what comes up. You need to be aware. You might not be at a place, if you are a college student, where you've done meetings with people that you don't know yet. But I will say, from a business perspective, if you're about to sit down with someone that you haven't met before and you don't know a lot about them, you Google their name and you see what comes up. Not for bad reasons. You just want to see where they've worked, and maybe you both know a couple of people that are the same, like you have some commonalities, but you get a sense of who they are and it helps you prepare. The same thing happens in a job search. So you need to be aware of what people are seeing, but you also need to be in a position to manage it. So that means starting earlier rather than later. So what you want to do is take an accounting of all the social media platforms that you participate in: Insta, Facebook. Yes, I'm that age. I still do Facebook. Whatever it may be, and take a look at what your content is that's on there. Remove anything that is inappropriate. I know it's your social life, but once it goes up online, it is a public life, and people will take a look. And companies will make decisions about how to move forward with you. If you're connected with people that put up inappropriate things and it shows up on your feed, disconnect from them. You don't need that right now. I always tell my students, look at it from the eyes of, would I want my grandmother to see this? And if the answer is no, take it down. 7 years ago, students were saying, oh, I'm just closing it all down. I don't want any, if people search me, they're not going to find anything. That many years ago, it was an appropriate method of controlling it. Now it's seen as kind of suspicious. right? You don't have any. I mean, we all have that one friend that thinks they're going to be in the CIA and they're never going to put anything on social media. But for the other like 99.9% of us, we exist online and people are expecting to see it. So it's a matter of managing the information rather than closing it down. So start now, take a look, be reasonable, and make sure that people aren't going to see things that you don't want them to. This is a piece of the process that you can control. And research. So researching companies and types of positions that you would like to have when you are applying for for internships or jobs is a really important piece. I mentioned before, a lot of times you don't know what you want to do until you realize what you don't want to do. So there's some tools that are very helpful. LinkedIn, as I mentioned, is a great tool. You look people up, you get to see their resumes, the companies they've worked for, the positions that they've had, where they are now, what their education is. There is a ton that can be gleaned from LinkedIn. There are also jobs posted on LinkedIn, as well. Indeed is a job search site. By looking up job postings, you can learn a ton about what the day-to-day is. You can also learn about credentials that are necessary, if a type of degree that is necessary, right? Oh, I don't know, the school's grad admissions office keeps calling me and I don't know if I want to go to grad school or not, right? Should I go get a job or should I go to grad school? That's a big question. Well, start looking at jobs and seeing the credentials that are being asked for, right? Are you even employable at this point? Or do you need to get more skills to be to that level that you need to be, right? So by looking at the opportunities that are currently available and the types of organizations that are offering them, you'll learn a ton. I list Handshake on here because that is a tool that is used at many universities across the country as their own personal database for jobs and internships. So the organizations are posting jobs with specific schools, but then they also share that information across the board. So you definitely want to start looking around. And maybe the university relationships are a great place to start because it is a relationship that you have because you go to that school. And it might be an easier way in. It might be a company that comes to a career fair and you can start asking questions. That's why going to career fairs early is also very important for research. I always paint this picture of the senior that goes to the career fair for the very first time and they're meeting that recruiter at Compass for the very first time and they want that job. That conversation is so different from the conversation of the person that has been going to that career fair since freshman year and they walk up to that Compass table and I'll tell you, it's the same recruiter over and over again. 90% of the times. They like their job, they like what they do, so it'll be the same. A lot of times it's the same person or at least someone in the team. And you get to go, oh, hey, Jim, remember we met last year and the year before, and I'm finally looking for that opportunity. It's like talking to a friend rather than introducing yourself for the first time. So take advantage of these opportunities. And whether you are going back to campus or they're doing things virtually, there's still that opportunity to connect because a lot of universities will be starting, depending on how they're operating school in the fall, will be offering these opportunities virtually. So you can still absolutely take advantage. And then finally, networking. I think obviously LinkedIn and Handshake are great networking tools online, even when we are at home in this time. So you want to join groups. So groups that are revolving around the industries that you want to be part of. You absolutely want to connect to colleagues, professors, managers, right? Develop that network. Get connected to people so you can start to share information. It's amazing what comes out of someone just posting something saying, hey, I'm looking for an internship. And you start to get pinged around. You go to this person, to that person, or you want to have a conversation with someone. So definitely get connected. search those jobs, right? Look at what industry is asking for now. See the types of organizations that you might want to work for someday. Start to develop a list. Look at what their recruiting cycle is like. When are they doing internships? When are they recruiting for jobs? Do they have a management and training program that you want to be part of? What is their required GPA? Right? These are all things that are going to help you set a goal for yourself when you're in school. Connect with recruiters and hiring managers. So when you go to those events, whether they be virtual or in person, you have conversations with people, you can connect to them on LinkedIn. You can connect to people on LinkedIn that you've never talked to before. That's okay. Send a message and say, hey, I've done research. I want to work for you, FM Global. I know that. I know you have an internship program, but I'm connecting to you now because I'd love to stay in touch about upcoming opportunities. Companies also have LinkedIn pages. A lot of HR departments will have LinkedIn pages, and you can sign up to follow them. Attend industry events, so whether they be in person or virtual. And truly, if they are available, definitely get in touch with your career advisors at your university as much as you can. Be on their radar and be the person that they do want to recommend someday. And you never know what's going to happen. So I know I used to recommend some students, so it happens. All right, so that is my information about, college or career prep for college students. Many of these things you can definitely complete today at home or get started, maybe not complete them, but get started living in our virtual worlds, which will help you be heads and shoulders above the rest, especially for those of you who are walking into junior year. You want those resumes ready. You want LinkedIn profiles developed. You want to know which companies are hiring and set yourself a schedule for when to do those applications. It will make your life so much easier because guess what? When you go back to class in the fall, you're going to be expected to go to class too. So it's like having two jobs. So get started on the first one right away. And we are here to support you with the college planning portal for families. In addition to this information with career development, we also offer information for before, during, as well as after. So career and major exploration, which is our topic for this Saturday. We talk about ACTs and SATs, developing a college list, financial aid, funding school, refinancing, consolidation, because we have definitely worked in all facets of higher education, and we're here to support you and try to give you the best information possible. So I thank you kindly for attending. Shelley, do we have any other questions that have come in?
We don't. I did send out the link if they want to register for the portal. I want to thank you for your time and attention, Kathleen. That was fantastic. We're so lucky to have you teaching these topics. These are topics that are not widely covered, and the webinar is being recorded, so it will be up on our YouTube channel, but all of the templates and everything that Kathleen showed you around to see, which are incredibly useful, in my opinion, are within the portal, and you can download them once you do register as well. And I would encourage you to join us on our next college major selection, which will be on, when is that date, Kathleen? Do we know? It will be
Yes,
on
that's
April
Saturday.
19th,
Oh,
right? April
we don't.
19th?
It is the 19th. I apologize. Yes,
Yes.
at 10 a.m.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for your time and your information. Very useful.
Excellent. Have a great night, everybody.